The Xylar had watched our broadcasts for centuries. They saw our wars, our famines, our petty squabbles over lines on a map. They saw us argue about everything from the shape of our planet to the color of the sky. And they laughed. To them, we were a species of chaos, a failed experiment in sentience. So when their armada darkened the sky over every major city on Earth, their supreme commander, a crustacean-like being named Korrak, did not bother with a formal declaration of war. He simply sent a single message on every frequency: submit. You cannot win. Humanity, predictably, did not submit. We fired our nuclear missiles. We scrambled our fighter jets. We launched every projectile and energy weapon we had cobbled together from 100 years of paranoid military spending. The Xylar ships did not even flinch. Their energy shields absorbed our greatest weapons like a calm ocean absorbing raindrops. Then they fired back, not to destroy, but to cripple. They melted our launch silos, fried our power grids, and grounded our fleets with a single, silent pulse of electromagnetic energy. In 3 hours, the world's combined military might was reduced to scrap. And just like that, humanity lost the war. Or so the Xylar believed. Commander Korrak landed his flagship in the middle of what used to be Central Park. He stepped onto the charred grass, his 12-jointed legs clicking against the soil, and surveyed the wreckage of New York City. Around him, thousands of humans were being herded into camps by drone sentinels. They looked dirty, tired, and defeated. But Korrak, for all his intelligence, did not understand human faces. He did not see the quiet calculation behind the downcast eyes. He saw only submission. The war is over, Korrak announced to the global feed, his translator unit producing a cold, mechanical baritone. You will work. You will build our infrastructure. You will serve the Xylar hegemony. Resistance is futile. He was wrong about that too. At first, we did exactly what they wanted. We mined the asteroids they pointed us toward. We assembled the prefabricated housing units for their garrison troops. We sorted their waste and calibrated their weapons. The Xylar overseers were efficient but lazy. They had conquered 1,000 worlds, and every time, the pattern was the same. Defeat the military, enslave the populace, extract the resources, move on. They had never encountered a species that treated defeat as a learning opportunity. The first sign of trouble came from the food. The Xylar, being aquatic in origin, required a diet rich in saline and trace minerals. They had brought their own rations, but they found them bland and unsatisfying. So they ordered human farmers to grow specific crops in specific conditions. The humans complied. They tilled the soil, planted the seeds, and fertilized the fields exactly as instructed. But they also added a few things to the irrigation water. Nothing toxic. Nothing that would show up on a standard chemical scan. Just a little extra iron here, a little extra sulfur there. The crops grew faster, larger, and more vibrant than the Xylar had ever seen. Delighted, the overseers increased their order. More food, more fields, more farmers. What the Xylar did not know was that those trace elements were altering the biochemistry of the crops in ways their scanners were not designed to detect. The plants began producing a compound that was, to Xylar physiology, mildly hallucinogenic. Not enough to cause alarm. Just enough to make the overseers feel a little more relaxed, a little less attentive, a little more willing to trust their human workers. Within 6 months, every Xylar on the planet was eating food grown by human hands, and every bite was slowly, subtly eroding their judgment. The second sign came from the infrastructure. The Xylar wanted their garrison bases built to exact specifications. Strong walls, automated defenses, redundant power systems. The humans built all of that. But they also added a few features of their own. A ventilation shaft here, a blind spot there, a drainage tunnel that happened to lead directly into the main armory. When the Xylar inspectors asked about these anomalies, the human engineers shrugged and said, local building codes. Earthquake zone. You wouldn't understand. The Xylar, who came from a technically dead world, did not understand. They also did not care enough to investigate. Their food was good, their quarters were comfortable, and the humans were so docile. What was the worst that could happen? The third sign was the most dangerous one, because it involved children. Xylar reproduction was a slow, ceremonial process. They had one offspring every 50 years, and that offspring was raised in a protected environment until adulthood. Human children, by contrast, seemed to the Xylar like swarming vermin. They were everywhere, loud, curious, and utterly fearless. They would creep into the Xylar camps, tug on the overseer's limbs, and ask endless questions. Why do you have 12 legs? What does your home world look like? Can you teach me to speak your language? The Xylar, despite their coldness, found these creatures oddly endearing. They began to tolerate them. Then they began to enjoy them. A few of the younger overseers started teaching the children, not just language, but mathematics, physics, even the basics of Xylar shield technology. The parents of these children did nothing to stop it. They simply watched, and waited, and smiled. By the end of the first year, the Xylar had built a dozen major garrisons, a fleet of cargo haulers, and a planetary communications array. They had also developed a mild but persistent dependence on human-grown crops, a network of bases riddled with hidden vulnerabilities, and a genuine fondness for human children. Commander Korrak, who had grown particularly attached to a 9-year-old girl named May who called him, Mr. Tickles, began to suspect that something was wrong. But every time he tried to focus on the problem, his thoughts would drift to the delicious grain cakes the humans had started including with his breakfast. The tipping point came on the 400th day of the occupation. A Xylar scout ship returning from the outer system reported an unusual energy signature on Mars. Not weapons. Not a fleet. Just a single, massive structure buried beneath the surface, emitting a rhythmic pulse. The Xylar scientists were baffled. Humans did not have colonies on Mars. They could not have built anything that large. And yet the signature was unmistakably artificial. Korrak ordered an excavation. The humans, as always, complied. They sent their mining teams to Mars, drilled through the red dust, and uncovered something that made even the cold-blooded Xylar feel a chill. It was a computational core, the size of a mountain, built from materials the Xylar did not recognize. It was not human technology. It was not Xylar technology. And it had been there for a long time. Millions of years, at least. Possibly longer. The humans seemed unsurprised. In fact, they seemed almost bored. Oh, that, said the lead human engineer, a woman with gray hair and calm eyes. We found that 20 years ago. Before you arrived. Korrak's translator unit crackled with his rising alarm. You found this. And you did not tell us. You didn't ask, the woman replied. And besides, it wasn't finished yet. Finished. Finished for what? The woman smiled. It was the same smile that human parents had been smiling for the past year, while their children learned the secrets of Xylar shields. It was the same smile that human farmers had been smiling while they laced the crops with hallucinogens. It was the smile of a species that had never really been defeated, because it had never really been fighting. We call it the lullaby, she said. It's a signal. A very specific signal. It tells the local galactic infrastructure that a system is ready for development. You see, Commander, we're not as young as you think. We're not as weak. We're just patient. We let you in because we needed you to bring your ships, your technology, your knowledge. We needed to learn from you. And we needed you to stay long enough for the lullaby to finish its work. Korrak tried to order his drones to fire. He tried to call for reinforcements. He tried to do anything at all. But his limbs would not move. His translator crackled with static. Across the planet, every Xylar ship, every drone, every weapon, every communication device, went dark at the same moment. The lullaby had not just been transmitting into space. It had been transmitting into the Xylar systems for the past 400 days, piggybacking on their own communications array, the one the humans had so helpfully built. The Xylar had not conquered Earth. They had delivered themselves, piece by piece, into the heart of a trap that had been set before their species learned to walk on land. May, the 9-year-old girl, walked up to Korrak's frozen body and patted one of his legs. "Don't worry, Mr. Tickles," she said. "We're not going to hurt you. We just need your ships. And your maps. And your knowledge. You showed us how to break your shields. Now we're going to show you something." She pointed to the sky. "Out there, there are worse things than you. Things that have been eating species like yours for a billion years. We saw them when we activated the lullaby. And now they see us. They'll be here soon. That's why we needed you. Not to fight us. To join us." Korrak, who could still see and hear even if he could not move, felt something he had never felt before. It was not fear, exactly. It was closer to awe. He had studied 1,000 conquered species. He had seen them broken, scattered, reduced to servitude. But he had never seen one that treated conquest as a transaction. He had never seen a species that would lose a war on purpose, just to win the peace. Over the next 72 hours, the lullaby released its hold on the Xylar. They regained control of their bodies, their ships, their weapons. But they did not fire. They could not. Because the humans had not just disabled their technology. They had disabled their will to fight. The hallucinogenic crops had been retired, but something else had taken its place. The children. The patience. The strange, disarming kindness. The Xylar had not been conquered. They had been adopted. Commander Korrak stood at the edge of the excavation on Mars, looking down at the immense computational core. Beside him stood the gray-haired engineer, whose name was Dr. Aris Thorn. She was holding a tablet that displayed the lullaby's latest data. The signals from deep space were growing stronger. The predators were coming. "How long?" Korrak asked. 18 months. Drive. Thorn said. "Maybe less. And you expect us to fight beside you? After everything?" Dr. Thorn looked at him with those calm, patient eyes. "Commander, you invaded our world. You enslaved our people. You treated us like animals. And we forgive you. Not because we are weak. Because we are strong enough to forgive. That is our weapon. It always has been. You came here with your shields and your pulse cannons and your 1,000 conquered worlds. And you lost to a little girl who gave you a nickname and a farmer who put iron in your water. Do you really think the things out there stand a chance?" Korrak had no answer. He could only watch as the human mining teams began to extract the lullaby's core, lifting it piece by piece into orbit. They were not building a weapon. They were building a network. A network that would turn every ship, every outpost, every communication relay in the sector into a node. A network that would sing the lullaby not just to one invading force, but to all of them. The humans called it the Harmony Project. It was not a shield. It was not a cannon. It was a virus that infected the very concept of war. It made enemies into allies. It made conquerors into protectors. And it had been running, in one form or another, since the first human looked at another human and decided to talk instead of fight. The Xylar stayed. They helped. They learned. They brought their technology, their knowledge, their 12-legged children to play with the human children. And when the predators finally arrived, hundreds of ships darkening the sky, their weapons primed to devour everything in their path, they found a world that was not afraid. They found Commander Korrak standing beside Drive Thorn, both of them smiling. They found May, now 11 years old, holding a tablet that controlled the Harmony Project. And they heard, for the first and last time, the lullaby. It was not a scream. It was not a threat. It was a song. A simple, human song, passed down through generations, about a shepherd who left 99 sheep to find the one that was lost. The predators did not understand the song, not at first. But their ships did. Their weapons did. Their computers, their communications, their very thoughts began to slow, to soften, to turn towards something they had never experienced. Compassion. The lead predator ship tried to fire. Its weapons melted. It tried to flee. Its engines stalled. It tried to scream. Its voice became a whisper. And then, one by one, the predators fell silent. Not dead, just listening. May stepped forward, her voice carrying across the silent fleet. You're not our enemy. You're just hungry. We know. We've been hungry too. But we have enough. We've always had enough. We just had to learn how to share. She pressed a button on her tablet. Across the solar system, every human and Xylar ship began to broadcast the same message. Not a warning, an invitation. Come, eat, stay. We have room. The predators did not know what to do. They had never been invited before. They had only ever taken. But the lullaby was still singing, and somewhere deep in their ancient, predatory minds, a door opened. They remembered, just for a moment, what it felt like to be young. To be curious, to be afraid, and to be welcomed. One by one, they landed. Their massive, terrifying forms emerged from their ships, and they looked upon the humans with eyes that had never seen kindness. And the humans looked back with eyes that had never stopped hoping. Commander Korrak watched it all from the edge of the crowd. Dr. Aris Thorn stood beside him, her gray hair blowing in the Martian wind. You planned this, he said. From the very beginning. The moment we arrived. No, she said. From before you arrived. From the moment we found the lullaby, 20 years ago. We knew something was coming. We just didn't know what. So we prepared. We built. We waited. And when you showed up, we thought, well, they're not the worst option. Korrak made a sound that might have been a laugh, if a crustacean-like being from a distant star could laugh. We invaded your world, and you settled for us. We didn't settle. Drive. Thorn said. We adapted. It's what we do. You gave us a gift, Commander. You gave us a reason to finish the lullaby. You gave us a deadline. And you gave us your technology, your knowledge, your children to teach our children. You think we defeated you? No, we married you. That's the human way. We don't destroy what we don't understand. We befriend it. We learn from it. We grow. The last of the predator ships landed. From it emerged a creature so vast and strange that even the Xylar took a step back. But May walked forward without hesitation. She held out her hand. Welcome home, she said. The creature lowered its head. And for the first time in a billion years, it wept. And that was how humanity won the war, by losing it. That was how a species of chaos and contradiction taught the galaxy that strength is not about who can destroy the most, but about who can forgive the most. That was how a 9-year-old girl with a nickname for an alien commander became the bridge between 1,000 worlds. The Xylar never conquered another species after that. They didn't need to. They had found something better. They had found a family. And the predators, the ancient ones, the ones who had devoured civilizations since the dawn of time, they too changed. They became gardeners, protectors, teachers. Because the lullaby had shown them what they had always been, underneath the hunger. Lonely. So if you ever find yourself facing an enemy you cannot beat, remember the humans. Remember how they lost every battle and won every war. Remember how they turned their weakness into their greatest strength. And remember that sometimes, the best way to win is to let the other side think they have already won. Because while they are busy celebrating their victory, you can be busy building a future they never imagined. A future where everyone wins. Even the monsters. Especially the monsters. The Harmony Project had been singing for 3 years. Across the solar system, former enemies worked side by side. Xylar engineers taught human children how to bend gravity. Predator creatures, once the terror of a billion worlds, now tended vast gardens on the moons of Jupiter. May, now 12 years old, had become something more than a girl. She was a symbol. The bridge. The living proof that humanity's greatest strength had never been its weapons, but its willingness to forgive. Commander Korrak had grown old by Xylar standards, his shell deepening to a dark bronze, his 12 legs moving a little slower. He spent most of his days on Mars, helping drive. Aris Thorn monitor the lullaby's endless song. It was peaceful. It was good. And then the signal changed. It happened without warning. One moment, the lullaby was broadcasting its gentle frequency of unity and compassion. The next, something screamed back. Not a message, not a translation, a scream. Raw, ancient, and filled with such profound pain that every human, Xylar, and predator on every colony fell to their knees clutching their heads. May collapsed in the middle of a classroom on the Ganymede station, blood trickling from her nose. Korrak heard it in his very marrow, a vibration that made his joints lock and his mind spiral into darkness. Dr. Thorn, gray hair now white, managed to stay upright only by gripping the edge of the lullaby's control console. Her eyes were wide, not with fear, but with recognition. "We've been heard," she whispered. "Not by the predators. By something older. Something that was here before the lullaby was built." The scream lasted 11 seconds. But those 11 seconds changed everything. When it ended, every sensor in the solar system was pointing toward a point beyond the galactic core, a region of space that had been classified as empty. It was not empty anymore. A fleet was emerging from what appeared to be a wound in reality itself. Not ships, not as humans understood them. They were structures of living stone and pulsating light, each one the size of a small moon. And there were thousands of them. No, tens of thousands. They moved without engines, without exhaust, without any physics that human or Xylar science could explain. They simply appeared, and then they began to glide toward the solar system at a speed that should have been impossible. Korrak stood on the observation deck of the Mars base, his claws clicking nervously against the metal floor. Beside him, Drive, Thorn was running calculations on a tablet that kept smoking from the strain. 8 days, she said finally. Maybe 7. They're not slowing down. What are they? Korrak asked. His voice, usually so steady, cracked slightly. Doctor. Thorn looked up at the distant blur of approaching lights. The lullaby wasn't built by humans. We just found it. And we never knew who built it. Or why. I think we're about to find out. May arrived from Ganymede 6 hours later, her face pale but determined. She had grown taller, her black hair now streaked with an inexplicable silver at the temples. The scream had changed her, just as it had changed everyone. But where others felt fear, May felt something else. A pull, a recognition, as if the scream had been calling her name. Dr. Thorn, she said, stepping into the control room without knocking. I need to talk to them. Talk to who? Dr. Thorn asked. Whoever screamed. I think I can understand it now. The pain. It wasn't anger. It was grief. Something terrible happened to them, and they've been alone for a very, very long time. The lullaby woke them up. And now they're coming here because they think we're the ones who put them to sleep. Korrak clicked his claws in confusion. That makes no sense. The lullaby is a song of unity. How could it wake something that was sleeping? May walked to the main view screen, which showed the approaching fleet in terrifying detail. The stone structures were covered in symbols. Ancient, complex, and somehow familiar. She had never seen them before, and yet she could almost read them. The lullaby isn't just a song, she said quietly. It's a key. It unlocks something in every mind that hears it. Compassion. Forgiveness. The ability to see enemies as family. But what if those things were locked away for a reason? What if some species chose to forget how to love because love was too painful? The room went silent. Even the humming of the lullaby seemed to pause. Dr. Thorn was the first to speak. The builders of the lullaby. You think they used it on themselves? May nodded. They were like us once. They wanted to unite the galaxy. But something went wrong. Something so terrible that they decided the only way to survive was to stop feeling. They built the lullaby to lock away their emotions, their memories, their ability to care. And then they went to sleep. For millions of years. Until we came along and pressed the on button. Korrak's legs twitched. So they're not invaders. They're victims. And they think we're the ones who tortured them. Worse, May said. They think we're their children. The lullaby was designed to pass on their legacy. When we activated it, we inherited everything they were. Their knowledge, their technology, their pain. And now they want it back. The fleet arrived on the 7th day, just as Dr. Thorn had predicted. But they did not attack. They did not send weapons or drones or boarding parties. They simply stopped at the edge of the asteroid belt and waited. And then, for the second time, they screamed. This time, the scream was different. It had shape, structure, words, buried beneath layers of grief so thick they felt like physical pressure. The translators on every ship and colony worked frantically, piecing together fragments of an ancient language that had not been spoken since before Earth had formed its first ocean. And slowly, the message became clear. Return what was stolen. Return our hearts. Return our dreams. Return our dead. May stood on the bridge of the Harmony, a ship built from Xylar hulls and predator engines and human stubbornness. She was the only one who had volunteered to make first contact. Korrak had insisted on coming, his old claws gripping the railing. Dr. Thorn had refused to let either of them go alone. So the three of them, a human girl, an aging alien commander, and a gray-haired scientist, flew out to meet the fleet of grieving gods. The closest structure was the size of Manhattan. Its surface rippled with symbols that glowed and faded like breathing. As the Harmony approached, a section of the stone peeled back, revealing a cavern large enough to swallow the ship whole. May did not hesitate. Take us in. The interior was not stone. It was flesh. Warm, pulsing, alive. The walls shimmered with veins of light that throbbed in time with a distant heartbeat. Korrak made a sound of disgust deep in his throat. Dr. Thorn's hand went to her chest, feeling her own heart racing in sympathy. May simply walked forward, her footsteps silent on the organic floor. She did not need to be told where to go. Something was calling her, pulling her deeper. They found the being at the center of the structure. It was not a creature, not as they understood the word. It was a presence, a mass of light and shadow and memory that shifted and swirled like a storm trapped in glass. And it was weeping, not with tears, but with waves of pure sorrow that made the air itself feel heavy. May stopped a few feet away and sat down cross-legged on the pulsing floor. I'm here, she said softly. I heard you. Tell me what happened. The being did not speak. It showed. Images flooded May's mind so fast and so vividly that she gasped. She saw a species older than the stars. Beings of pure thought and energy who had watched galaxies form and die like flowers in a field. They had been powerful, wise, and utterly alone. So they had decided to create children. Not through birth, but through intention. They had seeded life across the cosmos, nudging evolution on a million worlds, hoping that one day, someone would join them in the great silence between stars. And someone did. Many someones. The Xylar. The predators. 1,000 other species that the being's children had nurtured and guided. But then something went wrong. The children grew faster than the parents had anticipated. They learned to build, to fight, to conquer. And they learned to hate. War spread across the galaxy like a fire. The parents tried to stop it, but they had made themselves vulnerable. They had poured so much of their essence into their children that they had little left to defend themselves. So they made a choice. They built the Lullaby, a device that would lock away their emotions, their memories, their very identities. They would become stone and light and silence. They would sleep until their children grew wise enough to wake them. And then they waited. For millions of years, they waited. And when the lullaby finally sang, they thought their children had returned. Instead, they found humans. Strangers. A species they had never touched. And in that moment, they realized the truth. Their children were gone. Dead. Extinct. The wars had consumed everyone. The only ones left were the ones they had never made. The images faded. May opened her eyes. Her cheeks were wet with tears she did not remember shedding. Behind her, Korrak and Dr. Thorn were also crying, though they could not have seen what May had seen. The grief was simply that powerful. You're wrong, May said, her voice steady despite everything. Your children aren't gone. We're not strangers. We're what your children became. The wars didn't kill everyone. They just changed everyone. The Xylar, the predators, the humans. We're all descended from the same seeds you planted. We just forgot. And then we found each other again. And we remembered. The being pulsed with light, a flash so bright that May had to shield her eyes. When she could see again, the storm of light and shadow had condensed into a shape. A figure. Tall, slender, with features that shifted between human, Xylar, and predator. It was trying to become what May wanted to see. Trying to understand. Show me, it said. The first real words it had spoken. Not a scream. Not a translation. A voice. Old and tired and desperately hopeful. May stood up and held out her hand. Come with me. I'll show you everything. Our wars. Our peace. Our mistakes. Our forgiveness. It's not perfect. We're not perfect. But we're still here. And we're still growing. That's what your children became. Not gods. Not monsters. Just people. Trying to be better than they were yesterday. The being reached out. Its hand, if it could be called a hand, trembled. It had not touched anything in millions of years. It had not dared. But now, facing this small, fragile human girl who should have been nothing more than dust to it, it felt something old and painful stir in its chest. The thing it had locked away. The thing it had sacrificed everything to forget. Hope. Their fingers met. And the galaxy changed. The lullaby, which had been singing the same note for 3 years, suddenly shifted. It added a harmony. Then another. Then 1,000. The song that filled the solar system became richer, deeper, more complex than anything any being had ever heard. It was the sound of an ancient parent remembering how to love. It was the sound of a child teaching its parent that love was never a weakness. It was the sound of a family, broken and scattered and wounded beyond measure, finally coming home. Korrak felt his old shell crack and fall away. Beneath it, new growth. Stronger, brighter, younger. Dr. Thorn felt the ache in her bones fade, replaced by a vitality she had not known since her 20s. The predators on the moons of Jupiter stopped tending their gardens and looked up at the sky, and for the first time in their existence, they smiled. And May, standing in the heart of a grieving god, felt the silver in her hair fade back to black. She was 12 again, not because she had lost her wisdom, but because she had found something better. A future that stretched out before her like an endless, sunlit field. The being, the ancient parent, the creature of stone and light and sorrow, did not speak again. It did not need to. It simply opened itself to the lullaby's new song and let the music wash away the eons of silence. Its fleet, the tens of thousands of moon-sized structures, began to change. The stone softened. The light warmed. The symbols on their surfaces rearranged themselves into words that any species could read. Welcome home, they said. We missed you. May turned to Korrak and Dr. Thorn, her eyes shining. They're not going to fight us. They're going to stay. They want to help. They want to learn everything we've learned. And they want to teach us everything they remember. Dr. Thorn shook her head in disbelief. 1,000,000 years of sleep. An entire galaxy of lost children. And it took a 12-year-old girl and a song to fix it all. Not fix, May said. Heal. There's a difference. Fixing is what you do to a machine. Healing is what you do to a family. And we're all family now. Every species. Every world. Every lonely, frightened, angry being who ever looked up at the stars and wondered if anyone was out there. We're not alone anymore. We never were. We just forgot to listen. The Harmony Project became something new that day. It stopped being a network of ships and relays and became a living web of connection that spanned the entire galaxy. The ancient parents, now called the first singers by those who loved them, wove themselves into the web, strengthening it, deepening it, making it permanent. The Xylar, who had once been conquerors, became the galaxy's explorers, venturing into the spaces between stars to find other lost children. The predators, who had once been devourers, became the galaxy's guardians, protecting the weak and the young. And the humans, who had once been chaos incarnate, became the galaxy's storytellers. They traveled from world to world, sharing tales of failure and forgiveness, of war and peace, of a little girl who had looked into the face of a grieving god and said, I'm here. Tell me what happened. Commander Korrak, now young again by Xylar standards, stood on the bridge of the Harmony with his old friend Drive. Aris Thorn. They watched as May, now 13, flew out to meet a new fleet of first singers that had just awakened from a distant nebula. She was not afraid. She had not been afraid since the day she had patted an alien invader on the leg and called him Mr. Tickles. Do you ever wonder, Drive? Thorn said quietly, if we did the right thing? Letting them win. Letting them stay. All those years ago. Korrak clicked his claws, a sound that had once been threatening but was now almost musical. I wonder if we had a choice. The humans were never going to fight us. Not really. You just needed someone to teach. Someone to adopt. Someone to love. We were never your enemies. We were just your first students. Doctor. Thorn smiled. And look at you now. Top of the class. Korrak made that strange, clicking laugh again. I still don't understand your humor, Drive. Thorn. But I think I'm beginning to like it. Far across the galaxy, in a classroom on Ganymede Station, a group of young Xylar, Predator, Human, and First Singer children sat in a circle. Their teacher was an old woman with white hair and kind eyes. She was telling them a story. The story of a war that was never really a war. The story of a song that healed the universe. The story of a girl named May, who had shown everyone that the strongest thing in existence was not a weapon, but a hand held out in peace. The children listened, their eyes wide, their hearts full. And when the story ended, they did not ask for another. They simply sat in silence, feeling the lullaby's new harmony wash over them, and understood that they were part of something infinitely larger than themselves. The first singers had been wrong about one thing. Their children had not died. They had evolved. They had grown. They had become something the first singers had never anticipated. They had become teachers. And now, the students were showing the teachers how to live again. It was not the ending anyone had expected. But it was the ending everyone needed. Because in the end, the galaxy did not need walls or weapons or empires. It needed a song. A single, simple, human song about a shepherd who left 99 sheep to find the one that was lost. And a little girl who was not afraid to hold the hand of a god. So if you ever find yourself facing the impossible, remember the first singers. Remember how they slept for 1,000,000 years because the pain was too great. And remember how they woke to find that someone had been singing to them all along. Someone small and brave and impossibly kind. Someone like May. Someone like you. Because the truth is, every war ends the same way. Not with a victor, but with a choice. You can keep fighting, or you can hold out your hand and say, I'm here. Tell me what happened. And then listen. Really listen. Because the scream you hear might not be a battle cry. It might be a heart, broken and alone, begging for someone to care. And caring, as humanity discovered long ago, is the most dangerous weapon of all. It cannot be blocked. It cannot be dodged. It cannot be defeated. Because once you truly care about someone, they are no longer your enemy. They are your family. And family, even a broken one, is worth everything. May stood on the observation deck of the Harmony, watching the first singer fleet fold itself into the lullaby's light. Beside her, Korrak clicked his claws softly. What happens now? He asked. May turned to him, her dark eyes reflecting 1,000,000 stars. Now, she said, we sing.